Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing you all of my pickups for the last half of April. Man, the year has gone quickly. There's a lot to get through, so I'm not going to spend too long on this intro. So let's get into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. First up is something that isn't related to anime and manga, but you can see here is very, very wonderful and definitely within my interests. This is the 3-book box set of Harry Potter the Illustrated collection. These releases were started putting out for the anniversary, I believe. All of the illustrations are done by Jim Kay. These are gorgeous editions. Ever since I learned about them, I've been wanting to buy them, but they're very, very pricey. The box set itself is over $100 usually for me. So today I was actually in a local Kmart to pick up some photographs that I was getting done, and I actually just went, because where you pick up the photographs, the book section is right there. And I always go in there because I like to see what's come out, I like to see what's available, and this was on clearance. So I got it for probably 40% off. There's a couple dings here and there on the top and like on the corners, but really that I don't really have an issue with. Harry Potter is something I've enjoyed for a very, very, very long time. I'm sure a lot of people of my generation also grew up with this series, and if you haven't seen these illustrated editions, they are so beautiful. Definitely a collector's piece. I really don't own a huge amount of copies of Harry Potter. I own this now. I own the original book set from when they were released, and I'm slowly picking up some of the newer editions just because of the new covers and that sort of thing. It's not something I really talk about, and I don't actively collect Harry Potter stuff, but for something like this, I had wanted to get it for a very, very long time. I do have my outside of my anime and manga collection, I do have my prose or my novel books reading type of stuff that I do as well, so this is just another piece of that. And really, I've already flicked through the first two, not the third one yet, but they're so beautiful. I highly recommend you look at them. There's a lot of unboxings of this particular set online. Just really, really wonderful. And this is the Bloomsbury edition. I think this also got a release in the US, but the Bloomsbury edition is the UK and Australian English language set. Next is some anime, and a couple of these things are second-hand. They're just to fill spots in the collection. This first thing is something I needed for my Ghibli sets, and that is the Blu-ray edition of My Neighbor Totoro by Hayao Miyazaki. This, of course, is beloved, very popular, well-known. This is the Australian edition, so like all of these editions, you get the disc, you get the little insert. And as you can probably see, all of the Australian editions actually come with a second, like a reversible cover with the Japanese art on the inside. So if you were more partial to having the Japanese titles and artwork, you have that option. Been meaning to pick this one up for literal years. I'm sure plenty of you guys who've watched my videos for a long time are aware of that. So now I only have 2 that I still need to get, those being Pompoko and The Cat Returns. And then I think there's the Red Turtle, and I may or may not get Ocean Waves because I really don't like that movie very much. So aside from those couple, I do own all the rest of the Ghibli films. And Totoro is sort of one of the last more popular ones that I still needed to get. Mainly because, of course, I just hadn't really prioritized it for a long time. And Totoro, I don't know why, but these Blu-rays always seem to be very expensive comparatively to the other films. And I don't know whether that's just because it is so popular, or if it's because Totoro is basically Ghibli's mascot, or what. I don't know. But really, really, really happy to finally have this set, and yeah, just check another box off of that list. other anime Blu-rays, these were actually downgrades technically from what I previously owned. I used to have the limited edition sets for this and sold them on because it's not a show that I rewatch all that often, and it's not one of my favorites even within this sort of group of series, and that is Steins Gate: The Complete Collection, so the 25 episodes on Blu-ray, and then also the film, which is Lode Region of Deja Vu. If you're not familiar with this series, very, very popular, based off of a visual novel of the same name. It follows a group of university students who have their own sort of like lab that they run and sort of just goof off in. And our main character, Okabe, definitely has sort of delusions of not grandeur so much as just like weird things he does. He always is pretending like there's this secret organization after him and he's this mad scientist and that he knows all of these secrets and he's a danger to society. But one day they actually they sort of stumble across the fact that they've discovered time travel. And because of this, all of these different weird things start happening. Okabe actually witnesses a murder, but then later meets the girl who was murdered, and so is trying to prevent that from happening and bringing her into the lab members. And there's a lot of different things going on. It's very, very intriguing, and it's done really, really well. Visual novel adaptations can be really hit or miss sometimes. So this one was one that a lot of people enjoy, a lot of people really like, and is definitely probably the most well respected of these like science adventure games or science adventure series. Chaos Head and Chaos Child are also within this universe, as is Robotics Notes. I actually prefer Robotics Notes a little bit more. It's a completely different type of story and completely different set of characters, but I don't know, it just worked a little better for me. But I do really enjoy Steins Gate. I really enjoy the actors' performances. I haven't seen the English, so I am talking about the Japanese performances, and it looks really good. It's a nice looking show. So yes, I sold off my limited edition just because I wasn't really, it's not really something I wanted as a limited edition within the collection, and I thought someone else would probably value it more than I do. And I was able to get the film off of Amazon for very cheap. And then I actually found the series itself secondhand at a pawn store for even cheaper than the film. So I had a really good deal on those. So yeah, really, really happy to have this series, I guess, again in the collection. And yeah, this sort of standard set is a lot easier for me. On to manga. I actually found this series secondhand from a local seller via the Australian version of Craigslist, which is called Gumtree, and I managed to get all of these books for less than $3 a piece, which is really great because they usually run about $16 to $18 new here. So I'd wanted to get it for a really long time, but that price range was just a little out of my budget. I wasn't that motivated to get it, if you know what I mean. So really happy to finally have this series, and I am pretty much up to date with it now. And that is Yotsuba and by Kiyohiko Azuma. You may be familiar with this mangaka's other work, being Azumanga Daioh, and this is a slice of life comedy about a 6-year-old girl called Yotsuba and sort of just the people in her neighborhood. She has recently moved there. Her father works from home but is usually busy and isn't able to look after her, or I guess look out for what she's doing all the time. So he sort of lets her run wild, and she's definitely a very inquisitive and interested and curious kid, and quite mischievous as well. She gets herself into a lot of trouble, but fundamentally is a good kid. She doesn't try to make trouble, anything like that. She just doesn't necessarily understand the implications or the consequences for certain things. But it's a really, really sweet manga. It's definitely beloved. I've never been a huge fan of Azumanga Daioh, which is probably a controversial thing to say, but I don't know what it is, the difference between this and that I enjoy more. I think maybe I just am more forgiving to childish antics for really little kids, and I think people who are familiar with kids do recognize a lot of the behaviors in this series. So that's volume 1. I also got volume 2, volume 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, which was the most recent one for a very long time. I believe the series did go on hiatus, but 14 has just recently been released. I haven't gotten that one yet, but I probably, once I've read all of these previous 13, I'll get that one. I've read up to volume 5 so far, really enjoying it. So yes, hopefully sooner rather than later you'll probably see volume 14 in one of these pickup videos. Another older manga or secondhand manga that I bought was volume 7 of With the Light Raising an Autistic Child by Keiko Tobe. This is the final volume that I needed to complete my set of this wonderful, wonderful manga. This is the story about a woman, a mother, and her oldest son who has autism and other various developmental disorders, and sort of just his life and how society reacts to him, how the family has had to, adapt and adjust their expectations of how the family dynamic should be because of that. And although it does handle like a lot of kids with various developmental problems or disorders, it does treat them all very respectfully, and it does call out a lot of the hypocrisy and just like really bad behavior that you do see from general people and even family members. It's really, really, really wonderful. And although this series is super hard to find, I know it's not always something people will be able to get in print. Technically, it is very out of print. You can buy the series in its entirety via Kindle or digital means. It's absolutely beautiful, and as I mentioned when I'm talking about the previous volumes of this series, it is 17 volumes in all, single volumes, so majority of them are 2-in-1 omnibuses. And Keiko Tobe actually died before she was able to finish this series. She knew that she wouldn't be able to wrap it up, so she did give us somewhat of an ending, although mainly through storyboards and not through like actual finished comics. So it's not... I feel like if she'd had the chance to expand on the series and do more with it and didn't have her struggle and ultimately her untimely demise through her illness, that we would have seen this character, Hikaru, from infancy all the way until probably his high school or even going into university. Where it ends, it is middle school for him, so you do see a large chunk of his life, and you can only hope for the best for this character. He has people around him who love him, who understand him, who are able to, communicate and connect with him in a way that if you don't have people with autism or who process things differently in your life, you may not fully realize or really understand. Beautifully done, really, really well handled, and I highly recommend it. But as I said, it is probably easier to find via digital means rather than these print editions, because they are very hard to find and very expensive. if you do. So, yes. Next is another book that I've wanted to get for a long time. This is the first of 4, and I actually read the second volume of this via my library, which is what I'd wanted to read it for a very long time, but usually the books are very, very, very expensive, but this one was on Amazon for half price, so I picked it up as soon as possible. I jumped on it, and that is the first volume of Showa, A History of Japan. This is the years 1926 to 1939 by Shigeru Mizuki. This is a manga, a sort of retelling of this period of history within Japan. And if you're unfamiliar, Showa actually was from, the period was between 1926 and 1989. So a huge amount of time there, 6 decades. So much change, so much happening, and of course, so much that Japan was involved with, especially considering the Second World War and the lead up to it, and sort of the consequences of it as well. Just so much going on. If you're unaware of Mizuki, he actually was in the army during the Second World War. A lot of his comics have a very anti-war message to them, and it's refreshing in this manga and in some of his other manga how he's able to be more so of an outside voice from what a lot of Japanese media at the time and even currently was able to say and was able to represent this period and Japan's involvement. Really, really wonderful. As you can tell, he has quite simple character designs, but there's some beautiful detailing. His background art is gorgeous. He was a phenomenal artist. He unfortunately died just a few years ago, at the ripe old age of 93, I believe. So, absolute legend. I've talked about him before in regards to his sort of seminal work, Kitaro. Everybody, probably one of his most famous works within Japan, and what he's most well known for. But this is an incredibly well researched series. All has actual historical events as well as his own perception on them, his own experiences, and is one I highly recommend if you are interested in history or Japanese history especially, and don't necessarily want to sit down and read a textbook about it, if that makes sense. It's really, really well done. And even more so than my recommendation, I actually had my dad read these first this volume and then the other volume that I had from the library, and he really appreciated them. He doesn't really like or understand or get manga. He's not, he doesn't read it, so it's not something he'd normally be interested in, but the subject matter and how well it's presented really allowed him to read it quite easily and, as I said, appreciate it. And especially considering Mizuki's stance on these things and being able to show sort of an unbiased view despite obviously having sort of directly experienced a lot of these things. It's very, 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 very good. Next, we have the most recent volume, I believe the most recent volume of Haikyuu, volume 31 by Haruichi Furudate. I said I was going to take a break on this series, and I did wait a while before picking this one up, but I also read these chapters on the Shonen Jump app and enjoyed them so much and was so excited, and it was a really good price, so I jumped on it. I really... Even though this is 30 volumes long, over 30 volumes long now, this series never ceases to get me really excited. I always have a really fun time. It's really enjoyable. All of the characters are really great. I've said this before in regards to the series over and over and over again, but it's true. I love how Furudate is able to make everybody so interesting, and you really want to root for all of these characters, even if they're not necessarily our main characters or our main team. There's such a wide variety of personalities here, and even for me, who doesn't really I have limited experience with volleyball. I never played it aside from, when you have to at school, those sorts of things. And I never really understood the rules of it up until, reading Haikyuu or watching Haikyuu. So it is easy for people to get into and to enjoy, even if you're not necessarily super invested in the sport itself. And that, again, is a testament to a good sports series. I think a good story can make you engaged with anything, even if that's a sport that you don't necessarily have any interest in, or if you have no interest in sports in real life at all, like me. But I enjoy this series. I enjoy other series about, basketball, baseball, all sorts of different things. And Haikyuu is just the most recent of a very long list of some wonderful sports series that's out, previously in English. But this one is definitely by far my favorite, currently being released in print. Chihayafuru is also being released, but that is a digital-only release, so I can't really count it in the same sense. But wonderful, wonderful series. I really, even though it does, of course, have predictability and certain expectations for the genre, considering it's a Shonen Jump series, it's a sports series, so even though you expect things, and those things almost always happen, that doesn't mean it's less engaging or that you don't want to watch them happen. Haikyuu is a series most people can enjoy, and everyone that I know who reads it or watches it has always loved it. It's definitely one that is very, very broad appeal, and you can see why it's so popular. And even at 31 volumes, it's still, able to make me happy and excited and interested and wanting to see how these boys are going to play some volleyball. And if that isn't a testament to the strength of a series, then I don't know what is. But yeah, most of you guys are well aware of Haikyuu. You're probably buying it, or you probably know if you're going to enjoy it or not, or watch it, or whatever it is you do. It is wonderful, and I'm just one out of a multitude of people who will tell you that it is very, very good, well deserving of the hype. And of course, this manga is just as great as the anime, and of course has gone on longer than the anime now currently. So if you want more of the story, check out the manga. A slightly older Viz release, I say that, it's only a couple months old, but I didn't pre-order it, I guess is sort of what I mean by this. And that is the 4th volume of Dead Dead Demons Dead Destruction by Inio Asano. This is Asano's currently ongoing, slice of life drama about teenage girls who live in Tokyo after an alien invasion. And there's a hovering, sort of UFO over the city, and a lot of things have changed, and humans may be at threat to aliens who are sort of slowly infiltrating, and lots of societal breakdown, and a lot of themes that people who are familiar with Asano probably recognize. It's an interesting little series. It's definitely far more approachable than I would say some of his other work, most notably being like Good Night Punpun. It doesn't have nearly as overwhelmingly bleak and dour and depressing a tone as that series, and I think it's all the better for it. There's a place for those series, but they're not always that fun to read, if that makes sense. And this, I think, like with Solanin, is probably a better work to start with if you're wanting to try Asano's work, or if you are a fan of Solanin but not necessarily his other works that are available in English. Check this one out because it is quite different from Punpun and Girl on the Shore. There's a lot of very relatable, like millennial style, sort of just nihilism and this sort of defeatist humor, and covering this sort of weariness that the younger generation has with the current state of affairs. It's very relatable, I think, for a lot of people, and it does, as I say, have that tone and have that sense of humor and that style that people my age and, younger, those who are in just starting university or those who are in high school, who are just sick of what the world is, but have become sort of complacent. And the aliens in this series are sort of an extension of that, even though there has been obviously aliens are real and they're hovering above us and they're a constant threat, but life goes on and people have been able to adapt and almost ignore this whole thing because it's not an immediate threat to them. It's not impacting their everyday lives, and it might not even impact them directly. So it's somebody else's problem, or yes, we're aware it's a problem, but it's not, super urgent comparatively to some other things that other people prioritize. It's really, really well done. Obviously very allegorical for a lot of other things going on in the world currently and, over the past 5-10 years. One that, as I said, is probably a little bit easier to get into compared to some of Asano's other work. So if you're not a fan of some of his darker, more depressing, more hopeless series, this one is not that. It is very obviously an Asano work, and it is quite cynical, but with a humorous tone to it, and with a more general appeal to it, rather than appealing directly to the very depressive parts of the human psyche. And talking about the depressive parts of human psyche, I have the most recent volume of Tokyo Tarareba Girls by Akiko Higashimura. This is volume 6 out of the 9-volume series. Really, really love this josei series. And if you're not familiar, this is the story of 3 young women in their early 30s who, although having sort of careers and are fairly independent and well put together, don't have partners, they don't have families, and as such they feel like they're under a lot of pressure to, fit into the expectations of women in their position, that they should have partners and families and other things in their life, other people in their life at this age. And so they sort of make a pledge to be married or at least have a boyfriend by the 2020 Olympics. This is such a horrifyingly relatable series. Whether or not you're a woman, whether or not you're in your 30s, I think everybody has expectations from society that they feel like they don't fulfill, whether that's being behind your peers in regards to education, or whether or not you even had a formal education, whether you are like these women where you've had a very, very stable and solid place within your career path, but you feel like there's no real forward momentum currently, and because you've spent all your time on your career, you don't have much of a personal life. Same for young men or men in general who do sort of prioritize work over relationships, who don't have a family by X age, who don't have the 2.5 kids in the white picket fence house, that don't fit into what society is telling them that they should have by a certain age, by a certain point in their life. And I think as people, we all have various iterations of this that apply to ourselves. Nobody is going to fit the stereotype, the social expectation 100%. And for me, there's definitely parts of this where I'm like, oh man, this is too painful. It's truly a horror series, truly the most scary type of horror that we are seeing in manga, but it is one that I think is effective because it is so relatable and it does have such a broad appeal to it, even though of course it is talking about young women or working women. It's talking about their love lives and relationships and their work, their careers, and just their expectations for that and their roles in those jobs. I think it's not inherently just something that women will be able to relate to. As I mentioned, everybody has these things that they worry about, that they don't feel they quite fit the mold with. And Higashimura is brilliant at capturing these feelings, these topics, with a very wonderful and biting sense of dark humor. It's funny to read, but also terrifying to read. And that just really goes to show how strong she is of a writer and how well she's able to capture the scenarios that she puts into her manga. This plus Princess Jellyfish is some of the best stuff we see within this genre, or this demographic especially. Josei series is a very, very broad demographic, and Higashimura really is the one who rejuvenated it within the English market. Princess Jellyfish was really the first step to pushing Josei to more relevance and to a broader awareness. Her upcoming series, Blank Canvas, My So-Called Artist Life, is also one that I'm highly anticipating, and I hope we see more of her stuff because she is a Wonder Woman. She has like 10 ongoing series at any time. I don't know how she does it. She needs to take a break and rest. She needs to be like Mizuki, who would get 8 hours of sleep every night and live to be 93. I don't want her working herself to death, but the quality of her stories are so wonderful. And this particular series, although it is finished at the 9th volume, is actually getting a, I guess, quote-unquote second season or sequel spin-off type of thing with a whole bunch of different characters, which I think will also be really good. That's just starting this month or next month. So I hope we see a license for that one down the line. And considering how popular Higashimura is, I'm not too worried that we won't see it. But I do want more of her other works too. Please, publishers. Next, we've got the final volume for a series. I waited forever for this volume. I don't know how long, months, for this volume, because Amazon Australia didn't want to fulfill it for some reason. They didn't have stock for a long time, and I didn't want to cancel the order because my pre-order price was way cheaper than anywhere else it currently was in stock. So I had to be patient, but I finally got volume 6 of Aka 13, Territory Inspection Department by Natsume Ono. Wonderful, wonderful series. Sort of slice of life, subterfuge series about a man who works for the Aka, who is goes around, sort of, they're like a police force within their country, and they go around to the various territories and, see what's going on. His role is to, report on the various other Aka groups within the country, and through this, because he is so able to, easily to go in between territories, he's being followed and believed to be sort of the instigator for, or I guess the messenger for, this unruly sort of anarchy. There's a lot of people who are wanting to overthrow the current government or the current crown, I guess the royal family, and abolish the collected territories and have them all be separate countries. Certain countries don't feel like they are valued, and like a lot of countries are imported, have higher taxes or a worse cost of living or quality of life, whereas other territories, because they're able to export or provide various resources, are much more lucrative. There's a lot of problems within this country, and we follow this series, and it doesn't seem like an immediate thing. It's a very slow burn, so it's not necessarily for everyone, but if you're familiar with Natsume Ono's work, then you probably will enjoy this. It definitely has a feel of her other longer series, which is House of Five Leaves, where there's a lot of the day-to-day stuff and a lot of seemingly mundane interactions that occur within this series, but it is slowly building towards something larger, and the atmosphere is meant to be very relaxed. Because our main character, Jean, who's on this cover, doesn't really have a huge investment whether or not things turn, like there is a revolution or anything like that. But we also learn his involvement and his family's involvement and the people around him may be greater than he even realizes. And he slowly starts to uncover the truth about himself that he didn't even know. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. Really, really lovely. And Natsume Ono's work is just... I love her character design. I love how unabashedly she puts in her interests in regards to sorts of characters, as well as the loving depiction of food all constantly in a lot of her manga. She definitely has an affinity for certain things, and you see it across the board with her series. I don't want to spoil anything. I do know what happens at the end of this. I haven't read this book yet, but I have seen the anime, which is also really wonderful. I would recommend it. It's only 11 episodes, and it was done by Madhouse. It is beautiful. But so happy to have another Ono series complete in the collection. So I am, as of now, currently up to date or completed my Ono collection that's available in English. She does have some other books here and there in Japanese that have never been licensed, but they've never been licensed, so I can't read them and I can't have them in the collection. So yes, really happy to finally finish the series, and I hope we do see another one from her sooner rather than later. And last but certainly not least is the debut volume of this seinen, sort of low fantasy slice of life series, Mystery by Aki Ire, and that is Go with the Clouds, North by Northwest, being put out by Vertical. This is a series currently running in Harta, which is, if you've watched my appearances on the manga live stream hosted by Low Holly and June Graves, the last time I was on there, someone asked what my favorite manga magazine was, and Harta was my answer, because they have such wonderful series in there, and every time I've read one of the series, I've always enjoyed it. So it's a seinen magazine, and all of their series have a similar feel to them. This is the same magazine as other very popular series. All of Kaoru Mori's series are published in there, or were published in there, even back when it was called Fellows. Then we have Hakome Mikochi, which is currently being released by Yen Press, I believe. Delicious in Dungeon is another one of their titles, which is one that I love. And they have some other stuff that hasn't been licensed, but I really want to read as well. They have good series, and I always enjoy them. But Go with the Clouds, North by Northwest really caught my eye, not only because it's Aki Ire, for whom you guys may be aware, also has another series coming out in English, Ryan in the Grey World. This has less of those problematic elements. There are still some issues with it. It's not going to be one that I think everybody's going to be able to go into blindly and be happy with, but there's so much potential in Ire's storytelling, and at least there's no nothing that as problematic or potentially problematic as in Ryan in the Grey World. But this follows Kei, who is a Japanese teen living in Iceland with his grandfather, and we learn through the first couple chapters that he can actually interact and talk with inanimate objects, most notably like mechanical or electronic objects. He can have conversations with them and they actually respond and he understands them. And there's an element, so it is this very low sort of interweaved fantasy element that is really only affecting him as well as his grandfather as well. There's the implication that he can understand the birds or the winds or things that other people don't necessarily understand. And it's something that he has inherited from his grandfather. And so because of that and because of his gift, he's been able to become sort of like a detective or someone who does jobs for money to sort of track down people. And in order to pay off sort of like his living expenses that his grandpa expects him to pay. It's beautiful. Like with Irei's other works, the artwork is gorgeous. I just adore her artwork, and it's very, very reminiscent of a lot of other series of this nature. We do also have the introduction of a young woman who is dating his grandfather, as well as Kei's younger brother who goes missing in Japan and finds his way to Iceland. Oh, we got some butt. And then there's like an implication that his younger brother is hiding something, that he may be responsible for the deaths of their aunt and uncle of whom he was staying with. And the cousin, I believe, cousin or niece, I think it may be cousin, of the young woman who is dating the grandfather, she also has this sort of otherworldly air to her, and she tells him not to trust his brother, that he doesn't tell the truth. There is like this boiling mystery and tension beneath the surface, but most of the chapters are quite self-contained, and it's a slow build-up. It eases you into the setting. Iceland is somewhere that I've always wanted to go, and I think it's like a very unique setting for manga, which is one of the other reasons I wanted to pick this one up. And it definitely leans into its setting. It definitely leans into what people know about Iceland and what people believe about Iceland, and there's a lot of potential here, and it's currently ongoing. There's 4 volumes, I believe, in Japan, and from this first volume, I'm very, very excited to read more. Like with Ran in the Grey World, I don't think it's always going to be something that everybody is totally cool with. I think there are certain issues that people may be uncomfortable with, but to a lesser extent in this series compared to Ran, and I would recommend it if you like seinen of this type. It's got a very fantastical element to it. It reminds me actually a lot of the series Witch Hat Atelier, but in a different sense, whereas that is very focused on the magic and it is sort of all consuming. The feelings of it, the atmosphere, are very reminiscent. And Ran in the Grey World as well. You do have this magical element, but it is more so about the day-to-day lives of the characters and the normalcy of their lives. So yes, really happy and really excited to start this new series from Irei, and really looking forward to the next volume whenever it comes out. So that was everything for my pickups for the last half of April. A lot more than I expected, mainly because of all of this right here. But a lot of really good titles, a lot of interesting mix from various publishers. We had a debut, we had the finale of something, and I finished off more than one series, which is really, really good for me. Yes, so let me know your thoughts on any of these series, whether you're reading any of them, whether you hadn't heard of them, or if there's something that, you agree with my opinion or totally disagree. I love to read your comments. I do try to get back to and respond to every single one of them. Yes, as always, in the description will be a link to my Twitter, so you can message me on there or DM me there. I am on there fairly frequently, so yeah, if I don't get back to you in the comments and it's urgent, then just message me there. Also, I have my book depository affiliate link, which is you're under no obligation to use, but if you are like me and living outside of the US and you want to buy books but have issues with like international shipping, that website actually provides free worldwide shipping. They have great customer service and a great range. They have pretty much everything on there. They even have some Dempa titles, finally. Their current stuff that's out isn't available, but they have the ability to pre-order things that are coming out in the future. So I don't know really what's going on with that, but if you are like me wanting to read Dempa titles but aren't like me and a crazy person and willing to pay the Amazon shipping on them, then that's really great option as well to finally have their stuff on there. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.